Chapter 331. Benjamin gave Sean the side eye. Having recovered his smile quickly, Sean prescribed some medication for Arissa. Once you've applied this a few times, you'll be fully recovered. I hope you'll be more careful the next time you drink coffee. Or else, you'll just end up making someone else worry. Arissa blushed after she was lectured by him. Thank you, she thanked him while receiving the medication. Sean replied with a smile, you should thank him instead. He then pointed at Benjamin. After giving him the side eye, Arissa ranted, why should I thank him? If it wasn't because he wanted to drink coffee, I wouldn't have scalded myself. Benjamin snapped, well, you should watch what you're drinking next time. While Arissa was filled with exasperation, Sean was dumbstruck by Benjamin's feistiness. All right now, Benjamin, calm down. It's understandable for Mrs. Graham to be in a bad mood due to her scalding herself. So, you have to be more understanding. After all, when you were having your allergy, didn't she coax you patiently? You should pick up a thing or two from her instead, he advised Benjamin. If there's nothing else, I'll be taking my leave now. Benjamin shot him a glare. Yeah, just get lost now, will you? Sean frowned. Only Benjamin is capable of kicking me out once I am of no use to him. Stumped by Benjamin's treatment of Sean, Arissa thanked the latter, sorry to have troubled you to come all the way here. Don't worry about it, I'm just doing my job. Remember to apply the medication, Sean replied cordially. After all, he was under Benjamin's employ as the latter's family doctor. If he didn't manage to arrive in time, Benjamin would likely end his career as a doctor. Arissa nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you, don't mention it. Feeling the weight of Benjamin's piercing gaze, Sean quickly packed up and nodded at them to bid goodbye. He reckoned he was still in time to join the children on their outing. Even though Arissa ignored Benjamin, she still felt the immense pressure he emitted from standing by her table. When their eyes met, she peered into the depths of his eyes and wondered what he was looking at. What is it, Mr. Graham? She asked plainly. Next time, don't be so polite to Sean, he reminded, stunning Arissa. Give me the medication, I'll apply it for you. When Benjamin reached out his hand, Arissa avoided it and insisted softly, I'll do it myself. How can you do it yourself when you can't even see it? Benjamin scoffed. Arissa pursed her lips in response. But it's just too embarrassing for him to apply the medication for me. I have a mirror. Pursing his lips, Benjamin stared intently at her. In that case, you should apply it right away. Just as he spoke, he returned to his desk. Subsequently, Arissa used the reflection on her phone's screen to apply the medication. The moment the medication made contact with her tongue, she was overwhelmed by how bitter it tasted. Grimacing in response, she spat it out at once. What are you doing? Benjamin's deep voice rang out. When Arissa looked up, she was greeted by a demanding look on his face. After drinking a few mouthfuls of water, she explained, the medication is too bitter for me. Benjamin scoffed, and here I thought you have a high tolerance for pain since you've criticized me for complaining about my medicine. Arissa was embarrassed after being reprimanded by him. How is that the same? All you had to do was swallow your medication, while I have to apply it on my tongue. Obviously, I'm not afraid of pills. Benjamin snorted, if you want to get better, just apply it quickly. Arissa turned her head away, as she no longer wanted to speak to him. After a while, she finally applied some medicine on her tongue. Later on, when Benjamin invited her to join a meeting, she was stunned. Isn't today the weekend? What kind of meeting are we having? A department manager's meeting. Benjamin glanced at her. Hurry up now. After packing her things, Arissa followed him quickly. Just when she thought he was trying to pull her leg, she was surprised to see the meeting room filled with people. Blinking her eyes, she hurried to her seat at once. Chapter 332. Benjamin swept his gaze across the room and saw that everyone was present. However, some of them didn't have time to change into formal clothing, while others got their buttons mismatched. Next time you're here for the meeting, make sure you dress properly before entering the office. The moment Benjamin reprimanded them, they straightened their clothes at once. As he swept his gaze across the room again to inspect, everyone felt edgy in their seats. Let's begin. Based on routine, everyone took their turns to present their reports. In the meantime, others snuck a glance at Benjamin and were unsettled upon seeing the grim look on his face. When it was Arissa's turn, Benjamin decided to skip her on the account of her scalded tongue. Miss York, you will report to me later. As for the rest of you, continue. Glancing at him, Arissa saw that Benjamin was listening intently to the progress reports from the other departments. Whenever there were any problems, he would resolve them decisively. Throughout the meeting, he would exude the impressive aura of a charismatic leader. Arissa was filled with admiration when she watched how efficient Benjamin was at work. After the meeting was chaired for an hour, it finally came to an end. Mr. Graham, are you feeling better now? Mr. Graham, why don't you rest for a few days more? The department managers expressed their concerns. As you can see, I've already recovered, Benjamin declared. He then turned to Arissa and said, Arissa, come with me to my office. Stumped, Arissa had no choice but to follow him under everyone's surprised gazes. Once they were gone, the managers began to gossip. Mr. Frank, what's Miss York's relationship with Mr. Graham? It was obvious to them that Benjamin treated Arissa differently. In fact, they seemed to be quite close. Ethan beamed. Whatever it is, just take good care of Miss York. Considering how sharp everyone was, they could read between the lines of what Ethan had said. When did they start going out with each other? Sweeping his gaze at the managers in the room, Ethan grinned. All right now, stop being busybodies. There's no way I'm going to answer a question like that. Also, have your departments finished your work on schedule? If not, you'd better get it done so that you will not end up pleading for an extension when you fail to deliver. By then, there's no way I'm going to help you. Mr. Frank, I'll buy you a drink when you're free. I'll buy you lunch. Let's go to the club. It'll be on me. Ethan pursed his lips. I don't have the time. Oblivious that everyone else was gossiping about them, Arissa followed Benjamin back to his office. The moment they returned, the latter dove back into his work. Mr. Graham, get back to work, Benjamin grunted before typing furiously on the keyboard. Don't I need to present the report to you? Arissa asked. Benjamin glanced at her. If I had wanted you to report it, I would have asked you to during the meeting. Why would I wait till now? Arissa seethed. But that's not what you said earlier. Is your tongue better now? Arissa raised her brow when she saw the concerned look in his eyes. I have no trouble talking. It was no longer painful. All she felt was a little numbness. Benjamin grunted before adding, if Gavin finds out, he will blame me for it. Arissa rolled her eyes at him. Don't worry, I won't tell the kids about it. Returning to her desk, she wondered what the big deal was for him to admit that he cared for her. HMPH. After he saw the smug look on Arissa's face, Benjamin let out a sigh before throwing himself back into work. Suddenly, Arissa's phone rang. When she saw that it was an unknown number, she ended the call without answering. After a while, it rang again, causing her to frown in annoyance. Who can it be? Benjamin looked in her direction. Why aren't you picking up? Returning his glance, Arissa went out to answer it. Hello, Miss York. Arissa was stunned. Who are you? Miss York, I'm Miss Adams's lawyer, Leon Landon. Can we meet? Chapter 333. When Arissa heard who it was, she was filled with a sense of hostility. I'm sorry, I don't think there's a need for us to meet. With that, she ended the call. Why is Donna's lawyer calling me? Is she trying to threaten me again? The next moment, her phone rang again. Caught by surprise, she ended the call without a second thought. Taking a deep breath, she suppressed the hatred welling inside her before returning to the office. Before she sat down, she received a message from Leon. It read, Hello, Miss York, my client would like to speak to you. Can you meet us outside? My, how persistent. They must be crazy if they think I would agree to meet them. Arissa snorted in response. She didn't want to have any interaction with Donna, for she wasn't going to back down with regard to the lawsuit. Consequently, she blacklisted Leon's number. Sensing something amiss, Benjamin asked, What happened? Orissa looked at him. I got a call from Donna's lawyer. Benjamin lifted his brows in surprise. What for? He said that Donna has something to tell me. Orissa didn't mind sharing with Benjamin. Just ignore her, Benjamin advised. Orissa nodded before steadying her emotions and settling back into work. When Leon failed to contact Orissa, he had no choice but to get back to Donna. Given that the case was now handled by Benjamin's legal team, the only way Donna could turn it around was to work on Orissa, which she instructed Leon to do. In fact, she was confident that her strategy would succeed. Consequently, Orissa was surprised when Leon came to see her straight. After buying some pastries in the afternoon to satisfy Benjamin's craving, a stranger stood in her way when she was leaving the shop. Miss York. With his briefcase in hand, Leon handed his name card over. I'm Leon Landon, can you spare me a few minutes of your time? Upon realizing who he was, Orissa scowled. Didn't I reject your request in the morning? Why are you still here to see me? It's just something that I feel you should know. Or else, you might regret it. Being professional, Leon added, if you don't feel comfortable, you can get your lawyer to come. Leon stared at Orissa earnestly, confident that she wouldn't do it. Orissa furrowed her brows. Donna and I have nothing to talk about. She couldn't wait for Donna to suffer the punishment she deserved. It won't hurt just to listen, right? Whatever you want to do after that is your choice. I won't interfere. Orissa scrutinized Leon. Even though he was sent by Donna, he did have a point. After all, she wouldn't lose anything just by listening. With Benjamin's bodyguard nearby, she figured Leon was no threat to her, especially since they were in public. Fine, we'll talk inside. Orissa gave him a look. Sure. Leon ushered her in cordially. Both of them entered the pastry shop, as it was more convenient to talk inside than on the street. I still have to return to work. Whatever it is you want to say, make it quick. Orissa hurried him while putting down her things. After nodding in acknowledgement, Leon ordered 2 glasses of lemonade. Only then did he get right onto business. Donna didn't tell me everything. All she wants me to do is to pass you a message. Orissa knitted her brows. What is it? If there really was something to say, why didn't he tell me over the phone? Instead, he insists on meeting in person. She said, Orissa, do you remember how many children you gave birth to? Orissa's heart instantly sank as a sense of dread crept into her. What does Donna mean? Is that all? Orissa gave Leon an unsettled look. Leon nodded. That's it. That's what she wanted me to tell you. I'm not sure what it really means though, since she didn't give me the details. But based on the information I have, you have 5 children. Could it be that you have more than 5? Orissa clenched her fists as the words, more than 5, looped in her mind. Chapter 334. After leaving the pastry shop, Leon's words kept echoing in Orissa's mind. When she desperately tried to recall the details of her delivery, she felt a chill down her spine. Before I lost consciousness, did Donna take 1 or 2 babies away? Orissa wasn't certain of what happened back then. Or is she just saying something like that out of desperation? Back in the office, she remained in a daze, lost in thought about the matter. If there is still 1 or even 2 children out there, where have Donna taken them? Orissa shivered at the thought of what Donna was capable of. Noticing her listlessness, Benjamin was perturbed. Orissa, he called out in a deep voice. However, she never responded until he did so a few more times. When he saw how out of sorts she looked, his frown deepened. Come here, he ordered, maintaining an earnest gaze on her. Walking over, Orissa still had the pastries she bought in her hand. What happened to you? Benjamin gave her a piercing look. Orissa responded, it's nothing. Benjamin furrowed his brows. In that case, what's with that look? Do you need me to show you your face in the mirror? Pursing her lips, Orissa refrained from telling him about it, for she was still uncertain if there was still a child out there. Mr. Graham, here's what you ordered. When she saw the food she was holding, she handed it to him. You eat it, he replied. Orissa shot him a glare. Aren't you going to eat it? Benjamin returned his gaze to his documents. I'm not hungry. Orissa's lips twitched upon his answer. Then why did you get me to buy them for you in the first place? Are you crazy? Taking back the food, she returned to her desk and began digging in. Subsequently, Benjamin shot her a glance before heading to his break room. After closing the door, he strode to the balcony and gave his bodyguard a call, who coincidentally was about to inform Benjamin of the matter. Who did Orissa run into just now? Miss York met with a lawyer just now, Mr. Graham. Benjamin wrinkled his forehead. Donna's lawyer. Yes. The bodyguard reported what he saw. They spoke for a few minutes. Benjamin narrowed his. Chapter 335. Jonathan snorted. What's the message? You could have gone through me instead of seeing my client behind my back. After warning Leon, he questioned again, so, what did you tell her? Benjamin is still waiting for my update. It was just a short message. I doubt there's a need for you to be so agitated about it. Besides, it isn't really related to the case. In response to Leon's refusal to tell him, Jonathan sharpened his tone. Leon, let me remind you again, are you really sure you want to make enemies of Benjamin? Once it was known that Benjamin was the plaintiff, many lawyers avoided the case out of fear. Regardless of how much the Adams family was willing to pay, no one wanted to take the risk. Coincidentally, Leon was desperate for money and savored the opportunity to fight Jonathan in court. Otherwise, he, too, wouldn't have taken the case. What in the world did you tell Orissa? Jonathan demanded to know. After mumbling some gibberish, Leon finally revealed what he said. With no time to chide Leon any further, Jonathan called Benjamin at once. Benjamin, Leon's exact words to Orissa on behalf of Donna were, Orissa, do you remember how many children you gave birth to? Benjamin knitted his brows upon hearing that. Didn't Orissa give birth to 5 children? Why is Donna trying to obfuscate the fact? Benjamin, could it be that Orissa gave birth to more than 5 babies? Jonathan's question startled Benjamin. Meanwhile, Orissa was stunned when she looked up and didn't see Benjamin around. After checking her surroundings, she stared intently at his break room. Does he really not want the pastries? If he doesn't, I'm going to finish them all. At that moment, Orissa couldn't help but think about Donna's words and what her intention was. Should I meet up with her to clarify? Wrinkling her forehead, she found it difficult to stay calm. But if I go and see her, wouldn't I be falling into her trap? Just then, Benjamin came out of his room, and he noticed Orissa's expression alternating between anger and frustration. He walked over to her table and knocked on it. What are you thinking about? When Orissa looked up, they made eye contact with each other. She averted her gaze by reflex. I'm not thinking about anything. Do you really not want the pastries? Benjamin stared at her. No. After grunting in acknowledgement, Orissa gathered her emotions and continued on with her work. Nevertheless, she was unable to focus due to the turbulent emotions raging inside her. When Benjamin returned to his desk, Orissa's phone suddenly rang, jolting the two of them. Benjamin stared intently at her. Glancing at her phone, Orissa broke into a smile when she saw that it was Gavin on the line. A glint flashed across Benjamin's eyes in response. Orissa answered the call with a gentle voice. Sweetheart, what is it? Even though Benjamin recovered his gaze and continued working, his ears were pricked as he tried to listen in on their conversation. Mommy, what's for dinner? Orissa turned to look at Benjamin. I'm still not done with work yet and I'm not sure if I need to stay back. So why don't you eat with Grandpa first? But Mommy, Grandpa wants to eat together with you, Gavin conveyed Darius' words. Orissa felt awkward as Benjamin had insisted that she finish her work. She lowered her voice. Then, why don't you have a talk with Daddy and see what he thinks of it? Benjamin raised his brow. Mommy, is Daddy stopping you from leaving? Gavin then snorted. I'll get the driver to pick you up, Mommy. You should just ignore him and sneak out. Worst comes to worst, you can just quit. The boy exuded a frosty aura, taking after his father. Mommy, you haven't spent time with us today. Are you not planning to have dinner with us? Too moved, Orissa replied with a smile, all right. I'll be home for dinner. She agreed to her son's request as she couldn't bear to disappoint him. We'll be waiting, Gavin declared excitedly. With that, he informed Darius and the rest of his siblings at once. When Arissa heard the children's cheer in the background, she broke into an affectionate smile. After chatting for a while longer, she ended the call and accelerated her pace of work. Chapter 336. When it was time for dinner, Arissa snuck a glance at Benjamin and saw him on the phone with his back facing her. She could faintly hear him speaking in a foreign language. Seizing the opportunity, she packed her things and snuck out of the office. When she hurried into the elevator and turned around, she was stunned to see Benjamin enter. He gave her a look as if to warn her. Nevertheless, he continued talking on the phone with a stern expression. After the elevator doors closed, Arissa glimpsed at him awkwardly before pressing the button for the first floor. When they arrived, Benjamin was still on the phone. After taking another glance at him, she walked out of the elevator. When she noticed that he was following her, she turned around and remarked, "I'm going out for dinner." Giving her the side eye, he continued to follow her. Subsequently, Arissa glared at him when he entered the car her son had sent to pick her up. Raising his brow, Benjamin reciprocated with a piercing gaze of his own. With her lips pursed, Arissa asked softly, "Are you joining me for dinner?" After ending the call, Benjamin gave her a look of displeasure. "Are you leaving me to fend for myself by sneaking out?" Arissa's lips twitched at the accusation. "Well, it's just that when I saw how busy you were, I didn't want to disturb you." "Then why don't I feel welcomed when I followed you down?" Benjamin scoffed as he leaned closer to her. Arissa blinked before her eyes darted around shiftily. After that, she answered with an awkward smile, "You must have felt wrong, Mr. Graham." Benjamin let out a cold snort. She really is a feisty one. Despite trying to sneak out, she is adamant about finding excuses. "Where are you going for dinner?" He stared at her. Racking her brains, she teased, "I got asked out by a handsome guy." Benjamin furrowed his brows. "Who?" Arissa was amused by his response. "I doubt you'd know him even if I told you." At that moment, tension filled the air. Arissa felt goosebumps appear all over her body when she was enveloped by the pressure he emitted. Consequently, she rubbed both her arms. Benjamin looked at her from the corner of his eye. "Are you cold?" Arissa gave him a look but didn't respond. Benjamin then ordered the driver, "Turn up the heater." "Yes, Mr. Graham," the driver grunted in acknowledgement and did as he was instructed. "Mr. Graham, is this temperature all right?" Benjamin asked Arissa. "Are you still cold?" Arissa returned his gaze. "I'm fine now," Benjamin grunted in response. Nonetheless, Arissa continued to look ahead and ignored the suffocating aura that Benjamin was releasing. When Gavin called again, she hastily answered the phone. "Mommy, are you in the car yet?" Arissa replied softly, "I am. I just left the office." "Did Daddy notice you?" Gavin's wary voice rang out, which was clearly heard by Benjamin. "Is Gavin the handsome man she mentioned just now?" He snorted, "Gavin, what are you trying to do? Why do you need to hide the fact that you're having dinner from me?" Benjamin felt exasperated at how ungrateful his son was. Upon hearing Benjamin's voice, Gavin fell silent. A short while later, he added, "Mommy, come over quickly. We're waiting for you to start dinner." "All right," Arissa replied. "I'm already in the car. It's not like I can travel any faster." "Mommy, Grandpa has ordered a lot of delicious food for us." Arissa continued, "Sweetheart, where did all of you go today?" "We went to the playground. Zachary and the others had a lot of fun." Upon hearing Gavin's reply, Arissa cracked a vibrant smile. "Is that so? How about you then? Did you enjoy yourself?" Her mind was filled with images of the children having fun. "I did." Gavin laughed gleefully, warming Arissa's heart. "Sweetheart, I will take all of you there the next time." "That's wonderful." Gavin was filled with anticipation. He then said, "We'll see you in a while, Mommy." Chapter 337. "Okay, see you later, sweetheart." After Arissa hung up, she could feel Benjamin staring at her. She turned around and stared back at him, asking, "Why are you looking at me?" Benjamin felt slightly frustrated when he saw that the smile that Arissa had on her face earlier on had completely disappeared. He could not understand why the woman was so gentle when she interacted with the kids but was stingy with her affection when she was facing him. "Is Dad treating you to dinner?" Benjamin asked, cocking his brows. Orissa nodded and replied, "That's what Gavin said." Benjamin's eyes gleamed when he heard that, wondering why he was not invited to dinner as well. How could my own father do that to me? Am I really his son? At the same time, he also thought about his own son, who no longer felt like his son, as the boy was much closer to Orissa than him currently. Benjamin's face fell slightly at the thought of that. Orissa took a glance at his handsome face that was visibly tensed and explained in a soft voice, "Maybe Mr. Graham didn't ask you because he thought that you were busy." Benjamin turned toward her and replied, "You don't have to comfort me. Do you really think I'll be upset over just a meal?" Orissa gulped when she heard that. "If you're not upset, why are you following me then?" On the way to the restaurant, the couple did not speak to each other. When they reached the dinner venue, the 5 children were in the midst of playing with Darius, Kingsley, and Sean in the private room. Laughter filled the entire room. When the kids saw Orissa, they ran over to her at once. "Mommy, you're here," they exclaimed, jumping into their mother's arms, hugging her. Orissa stumbled a little when she tried to take all 5 of them into her embrace. Noticing that, Benjamin quickly put his arms around her waist to steady her, preventing her from falling. "Mommy, we've waited so long for you to reach." Orissa smiled and tousled the children's hair affectionately. "Didn't you say dinner start at 6? The kids nodded and replied, "Even though it's at 6, you can still come earlier." Orissa replied with a chuckle, "I was worried that you guys won't be here yet if I arrive too early." "All right, that's enough. Go wash your hands and get ready for dinner," Darius said to Orissa warmly. "Mr. Graham," Orissa greeted Darius at once. The older man nodded in acknowledgement before glancing at Benjamin and saying, "I'm surprised that my busy son is free to join us for dinner today." Benjamin looked at his father, feeling rather speechless. Orissa let out an amused chuckle while Kingsley and Sean tried to suppress their smiles. "Mommy, let's go wash our hands and get ready for dinner." "I'm famished," Jasper said, wrapping his arms around his stomach. Orissa looked at her cheeky son and asked, "Didn't you guys eat something when you were outside just now?" Jasper giggled awkwardly while Zachary jumped in and said, "Mommy, he's lying. He ate the most out of all of us just now." "Yeah, he was eating every food that he'd set his sights on. Grandpa bought us a ton of food just now." Oliver followed his brother's lead and ratted on Jasper as well. If not for the fact that their grandfather was paying, Jasper would not get to enjoy that much food. He was simply interested in every single food he saw, and it was a waste of money. Jessie was beaming from ear to ear as she chimed in, "Mommy, Jasper snatched my food to eat as well." Orissa pinched Jasper's cheeks and said, "How can you bully your sister?" Jasper stuck out his tongue mischievously and replied, "Mommy, Grandpa dotes on us so much. He buys us everything we want." Orissa did not know whether to laugh or cry at her son's antics. "So, if Grandpa doesn't buy you anything, does it mean that he doesn't dote on you anymore?" Jasper pressed his lips together and replied, "Of course not." "Mommy, why is he here too?" Gavin shot a glance at Benjamin and asked. Orissa gave the boy a hug before replying, "He saw me when I was trying to sneak out earlier and followed me into the elevator." Zachary blinked a few times and said, "I bet he's constantly spying on Mommy." Orissa was at a loss for words after hearing the kids' comments. Benjamin followed behind when Orissa took the children to wash their hands. When Benjamin was washing his hands next to Orissa, Zachary and his siblings sneaked a glance at their father. Sensing their gaze, Benjamin looked at them and asked, "Was it fun hanging out with your grandpa today?" The kids nodded and replied, "Yeah. We had so much fun." Benjamin nodded and waited for them to finish washing their hands before bringing them back to the private room. When they were back, Darius said to Orissa warmly, "Isa, come and take a seat." "Okay." Orissa nodded with a smile. Chapter 338. Orissa settled the kids down first before taking her seat at the dining table. Benjamin sat down next to her. Darius took a look at the couple and smiled. Kingsley and Sean looked at the two of them as well and exchanged knowing smiles. "We're starving just because we had to wait for you guys. Do you have nothing else to do?" Benjamin glanced at the two men expressionlessly. Kingsley and Sean merely smiled in response. Mrs. Graham, are you feeling better now? Sean glanced at Orissa and asked. Much better. Orissa nodded. Why? What happened to you, Isa? Darius noticed something amiss and asked Orissa in concern. Feeling somewhat embarrassed, Orissa replied, I scalded my tongue when I was drinking coffee this morning, but I'm fine now. You should take care of yourself more, Darius reminded before asking for the dishes to be served. Mommy, let me take a look at your tongue, Gavin said, turning toward his mother. Orissa chuckled and patted her son's head before answering, I'm fine now. She felt awkward acceding to her son's request with so many people around. While Gavin continued to fix his gaze on Orissa, Zachary, Oliver, Jasper, and Jesse looked over as well. Mommy, are you really okay now? They asked. Orissa nodded and said, Yes I am. Anyway, let's eat. While the 5 kids were taking turns putting food onto their mother's plate, they suddenly remembered Darius and started putting food onto their grandpa's plate as well. Darius was beaming from ear to ear as he watched his grandchildren serve him. Thank you, sweethearts. You're welcome, the children replied in unison. Jessie, come over to Grandpa, Darius said to the little girl, who was the apple of his eye. Jessie glanced toward Orissa and only went to Darius after receiving an encouraging nod from her mother. Here, Jessie, you'll sit right next to Grandpa. Darius lifted the girl onto his lap and started placing food onto her plate. Mr. Graham, why don't you let her sit on her own? Orissa said to Darius, worried that he was spoiling Jessie. She did not want her daughter to get used to other people feeding her. Benjamin glanced at her and said to his father, Dad, let Jessie sit on her own. Darius looked at the couple and laughed. I just want to spend more time with Jessie given that I only get to eat with the kids once in a blue moon. Gavin, Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper were already used to the fact that their sister was getting special treatment from their grandpa since she was his favorite. However, not only were they not jealous at all, they were glad that that was the case. Grandpa, I can eat myself. Let me sit on my own. Seeing that her brothers were all sitting independently, Jessie wanted to do that as well. Darius was a little annoyed at Benjamin and said, It's all your fault that Jessie doesn't want me to carry her now. Benjamin frowned when he heard that. Darius then instructed Kingsley to add a chair next to him for Jessie. After placing the girl on the chair, Darius started placing food on her plate again. Here you go, Jessie. You should eat more. Tell Grandpa what you like to eat, Darius said to the girl in a gentle tone before addressing the rest in a louder voice. Everyone, dig in. Stop looking at us. Everyone laughed before picking up their utensils and started eating. Benjamin found it strange that Darius was only paying attention to Jessie while the boys ate on their own. However, Sean and Kingsley were not surprised at all. Orissa smiled and continued eating. Seeing that the little girl was favored by Darius, she took some food for the boys. Thank you, Mommy, the 4 boys said simultaneously. Orissa smiled and replied, Eat more, boys. The 4 little fellas nodded. Benjamin glanced at Orissa, and his eyes lit up, noticing that she was enjoying her food. Mommy, I'll peel some prawns for you. Gavin offered and started peeling a large prawn for his mother. Orissa was delighted and said, Thank you, sweetheart. You're welcome, Mommy, Gavin replied with a wide grin on his face. After peeling a prawn for Orissa, the boy peeled one more prawn for Jessie before peeling one for himself. Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper followed their eldest brother's lead and started peeling prawns for their mother too. Benjamin shot a glance at Orissa's plate that was piled up with love from their children. Chapter 339. Sean and Kingsley, who were sitting across the table from Benjamin, noticed the envious look in the man's eye and smiled. Benjamin, you seem to be very envious of Mrs. Graham, Kingsley teased. Benjamin shot a piercing gaze at his friend after hearing that. Sean looked at the 2 other men in amusement and started teasing the kids. Zachary, why are you boys not peeling prawns for your daddy? He's a man. He doesn't need us to do that for him, the 4 little boys replied in unison. Ha ha, everyone burst out laughing when they heard that. There was nothing wrong with what the boys said. It was right for men to be caring toward women. Kingsley glanced at Benjamin and said, Benjamin, look, your sons are so gentlemanly. Why don't you learn from them and peel some prawns for Mrs. Graham too? Benjamin glared at his friend and replied, since you're so free, why don't you peel prawns for all of us? The corners of Kingsley's lips twitched. Orissa chuckled and continued eating the prawns that her boys had prepared for her happily. When Benjamin noticed that she seemed to be enjoying her prawns a lot, he peeled a prawn and placed it on her plate as well. Suddenly noticing the extra prawn on her plate, Orissa turned to look at the man. She could not help but gulp after seeing how elegant he looked even when he was eating. Don't keep eating prawns. Eat more of the other dishes as well, Benjamin said, turning his head in her direction. Orissa took one more look at him and continued eating. Even though Darius was taking care of Jesse, he was also paying attention to the interactions between Benjamin and Orissa at the same time. He laughed under his breath and asked Orissa, Issa, do you like these dishes? Yes, I do, Orissa replied with a nod. That's good to hear. We can order more of those that you like. Darius smiled. Okay, Mr. Graham, let Jessie eat on her own. You should eat something too. Orissa replied. Sure. Darius chuckled heartily. His appetite increased greatly after seeing how much his grandchildren were enjoying their dinner. Relishing in the harmonious atmosphere, Sean and Kingsley started filling their stomachs as well. Benjamin placed a piece of chicken on Orissa's plate and asked, do you like chicken? She glanced at him and replied, I do. The food here is pretty good. You should try a bit of everything, Benjamin suggested before going back to his own food. The children sneaked a glance at their father and were noticed by Orissa, who arched her eyebrows at them. When they realized that they had been discovered, they smiled at their mother cheekily. Concentrate on your dinner, she said to her children. Instantly, the 5 little ones turned back toward their plates and stopped looking around. Benjamin, is it very busy at the office? After a while, Darius asked Benjamin in a serious manner. It's all right, Benjamin glanced at his father and replied. If it's not that busy, try not to work overtime during the weekends. The kids are still young. You should try to spend more time with them. If you're really busy, you can carry on with your work but let Issa stay with the kids. It doesn't make sense for the two of you to spend the weekends working. It's not as if our family is short of money, and you have to work additionally hard to make ends meet. Try to spend more time with the kids. Although Darius gave Benjamin an earful, he was very considerate toward Orissa. He continued, the kids need their mom. If you insist on taking Issa with you to work, the little ones would be upset and wouldn't enjoy themselves as much. Benjamin cast a glance at his children. He couldn't tell that they were upset at all. I got it. He looked at Orissa before sweeping a glance at Gavin. Gavin stared back at his father. When Benjamin saw that, he sneered silently, wondering if the boy had complained to Darius. Why are you staring at me? Gavin asked fiercely, shooting daggers at Benjamin. Darius looked toward Benjamin in an intimidating manner as well. Why are you staring at my grandson? Benjamin was speechless. Orissa could not help but giggle under her breath, amused by the scene. Kingsley and Sean tried their best to suppress their laughter as well, after seeing Benjamin's inability to respond. Meanwhile, Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper burst out laughing. When Benjamin heard that, he gave the 3 boys a side eye. Chapter 340. Sensing their father glaring at them, the boys immediately took some food and placed it on Orissa's plate. Mommy, you should eat more. You must be tired after working so hard today. Kingsley laughed out loud when he heard that. Boys, why are you only taking food for your mommy? How about giving some to Uncle Sean too? Sean said in amusement. The 3 boys blinked before looking at Sean and said, Uncle Sean, we'll pass the food to you. You can take some for yourself. You're too far away from us. Sean and Kingsley laughed and said, look at how smart these boys are. Darius gazed at the boys affectionately before turning toward Benjamin. With a serious look on his face, he said, did you hear what I told you just now? Yes, Benjamin answered plainly. Just hearing is not enough. You have to take it to heart and act on it as well. Darius emphasized. All right. Benjamin merely agreed without saying anything else to prevent Darius from nagging any further. After dinner, everyone headed to the garden at the restaurant for a stroll. The garden was picturesque and well maintained. While everyone was enjoying their evening walk, Darius gestured for Benjamin to step aside for a chat. Dad. Benjamin walked toward Darius. Noticing that the father and son pair had something to talk about, Orissa wanted to take the kids somewhere else but was stopped by Darius. Issa, you should come over here as well. Of course, Mr. Graham. Orissa had no choice but to comply. Darius looked at her smilingly and teased, "It feels really awkward to hear you addressing me as Mr. Graham. When are you going to change the way you call me?" Orissa was confused. "I prefer to hear you call me Dad." Darius went straight to the point. Orissa was slightly startled and quickly explained, "Mr. Graham, I think you've mistaken. I'm not dating your son." Darius frowned and stared at Benjamin. Benjamin glanced at his father before looking toward Orissa, who was quick to clarify their relationship. He could not help but feel slightly displeased. He said, "Dad, she's just feeling a bit shy." Darius looked at his son and smiled. "Yeah, I can tell." Orissa was dumbfounded. "Since when did we start dating?" At that moment, Benjamin grabbed her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Orissa could feel an electric current flowing through her fingers, and her heart skipped a beat. "Dad, what is it that you wanted to say?" "Stop beating around the bush," Benjamin said, interrupting Orissa. Darius looked at the couple and said, "Oh, I was thinking that since the kids have reunited with each other, they should change their last name back to Graham." Darius glanced at Orissa after saying that. In actuality, Orissa had seen that coming. However, she did not know how to respond now that Darius had brought the matter up personally. "Got it, I know what to do," Benjamin replied. "Issa, what do you think about it?" Darius directed the question to Orissa. She looked at Darius before looking toward Benjamin. "Can we talk about this again at a later time?" Orissa knew that for a prominent family like the Grahams, changing the children's last names was not that simple. There would surely be complex procedures to follow in order to formalize the change. As such, she was rather reluctant to agree to that. She was not ready for her children to return to the Graham family. As Darius was an extremely sensitive and observant man, he only needed one look at the woman and he could guess what she was thinking. The kids are just changing their last name. No matter where they might be in the future, they will always be descendants of the Graham family. It doesn't mean that they will have to leave you. Orissa's eyes lit up when she heard that. "Mr. Graham, do you mean they can continue staying with me? We won't have to be separated?" When it came to matters concerning the kids, she made sure she clarified them properly. "Since you're their mom, it's only natural they should be with you. No one can change that fact. Even if you and Benjamin do not end up together, they can still choose to stay with you, and you will still have their custody. I know it wasn't easy bringing them up on your own. So, we won't snatch them away from you. My only request is that they change their last name back to Graham." Since Darius had already made his stance clear, Orissa figured she shouldn't keep refusing his request. "Do you mean it, Mr. Graham?" She then shot a glance at Benjamin, who merely fixed his gaze on her and kept quiet. "As long as I am still alive, I will keep my promise," Darius said firmly, completely ignoring Benjamin.